Welcome to the Strength Lab podcast. I am your host, Tyler Ramsey. I'm a 90 kg strongman competitor, gym owner, and online strength coach. And I am here with my buddy, my friend, also 90 kg competitor, Andrew. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, good. You were the first ever America's Strongest Man 90 kg winner of 2023. How was that experience for you?
Oh my God, it was fantastic, man. That felt like the culmination of probably at that time 8, 9 years of hard work, feeling validated, man.
Yeah.
Then it was cool getting to have you there alongside me, pushing me the whole time too. It was a hell of a weekend. That was a
It
really good
was.
time.
It was. I didn't know what to expect. That was kind of like my first like
Yeah,
big show, and obviously that was the first ever 90 kg competition. I was sitting in
yeah,
like I think I was sitting in like seventh or eighth going into the last day, and
yeah, man, and
I
just
don't
burned it
know.
on the last day.
I don't know. Yeah, it was crazy. They
It was
lined us up.
good.
They lined us up how we were placed, and I was like, oh shit, I'm in third. What the heck? All I had to
It's
do
always a
is
cool
all I had
feeling.
to do was finish the power stairs. Just beat
Hmm.
the other guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all it comes down to on the last day, man.
Yeah. How have the Arnold's been the last 2 years? I know you got second and third, correct?
Yeah, 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 yeah. They were really good, man. My very first Arnold was back in 2022 before we even had a 90 class. So I was lumped in with the 105s.
Okay.
And that year they had us sharing the pro stage. So we were back on like the big rogue stage, back behind the bleachers where all like the open guys were, which is really cool. Um, excuse me, 2023, uh, they lost that floor in 2023, right? And then 2024, we were in the like a smaller pen off to the side. Um,
Yeah.
so overall, like as an athlete, like I've been doing this for a while, man. I've competed at like a bunch of different kinds of venues, from like stadium seating to like small gyms to parking lots and stuff like that. So I've kind of
Yeah.
seen it all. And at that point, like I'll notice and pay attention to the layout. But it's not something that's really jarring to me at this point. So it was, I mean, it was a smaller pen. Um, but we did in 23, I remember have a pretty good like foot traffic crowd. And we were also right next to medieval night fighting, so that was kind
I
of dope
remember
to watch in
that.
between
I
events.
remember that.
Um, and it was a fun show, man. Like that was my first like big like international world championship performance where I made it to a finals. And so it was a pretty cool moment for me. Um, and I think that in comparison with this past year, James and his team at Strongman Core really like upped their presentation, upped
Yeah.
their organization of everything. Like even like it felt like America's Strongest Man, our first 90 kilo, and the Arnold had a very similar setup and a similar feel to it. And then as he took sole ownership of it and went into 2024 90 kilo ASM, there were a lot of noticeable difference in regards to like having these giant screens in the background
Yeah, that was nice.
to kind of show everything, the live stream quality, the equipment, all of that. And it felt like a continuation of that. So I'd say as far as overall athlete experience, like it's been steadily improving over the years. Um, really, I think the only hiccup from an athlete point of view, like one of the bigger ones was on day one with kind of organizing the athletes for the max log press.
Mm.
They did it powerlifting style, and I mean they were tight on volunteers, and the volunteers that were there were busting ass all weekend, and it would not have gone off as well as it did without them. Um, but the first few rounds, we were kind of struggling to figure out where we were going and when we were going and all of that. But as soon as it kind of weeded down to the third attempts and the last few people going, it cleaned up a little bit, and then it was just improvement after that.
Yeah.
Granted, the opens and I think the 105s had a little bit of a longer day and some events cut short by the end of it. But I mean, unfortunately, Strongman Core doesn't own the space. It's the Arnold that owns the space, and they're
Yeah.
kind of pigeonholed to their rules and their guidelines. So I think they pivoted well with what they could do, and James did a really good job. Excuse me, after the fact, putting out a post, I believe, on Reddit and Facebook, kind of taking accountability for everything and being honest and transparent about why things happened the way they did, which is really cool to see from the top end of an organization.
Yeah. Because I think whoever owned it before, and I feel like it was ran not as smooth
Yeah,
and it was just disorganized and confusing at like trying to get there, when events were
Yeah.
going to start, and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of a pain in
Mhm.
the butt. But this year at America's Strongest Man, like we got through events so quick. I mean, it was a smaller group of guys, so that helped.
Yeah.
I mean, there was only like what, nine of us, eight of us.
Yeah, about right there.
After Tyler got hurt on that log
Yeah.
press, that was
What a
crazy.
rough way on
Nah,
first event.
I know
That's
but he's
tough.
making good progress though. I've seen some of
No,
his
he
posts
is.
on Insta. He's doing some leg stuff now finally after the
Yeah.
so
Back
that
to
was good to see.
squatting, back to doing all kinds of stuff that he didn't wasn't sure if he was gonna be able to get back to, which is really cool to see
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah. So what sports did you play like in your younger age? Like maybe in like high school or whatever. Like what did you play that kind of you think kind of helped you develop into strength sports?
Um, honestly, none of the sports I played in high school are like the typical pipeline into strength sports at all. I grew up in a tennis household.
Okay.
Both of my parents coach. My dad is 70, God, he's gonna be 76 years old this year, and he's still out on tennis courts coaching. So I grew up playing tennis with my brothers and sisters. I played a little bit in high school. Um, for my last 2 years, I was captain of my tennis team. But the first like sport I got into in high school was swimming.
Okay.
Um,
What event did
and I
you
got
swim?
into that. I swam like depending on the region of the country that you're in. So Virginia, the farthest they'll go for high school swimming is a 400 meter. So I
Okay.
swam a 400 meter free, 200 meter free, and the 200 and 400 meter free relays. Um, so at the time, I had the record for my school in both the 400 free and the 200 free. Um, but that was my first like big experience with any kind of like athletic competition.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I don't know when or how I started doing this, but I like realized the last like length of a 400. So that's like 8 total laps back and forth in a 25-meter pool, which saying that right now doesn't seem like anything, but like as you're like sprinting your ass off,
Yeah,
feels like an eternity.
for sure.
Um, but I would realize like the last 50, I would just stop breathing. Like I wouldn't stop taking a breath at all, but I would hear through the water like, and I would turn it on. Like I would almost kind of conserve energy for the first like 80% of the race, keep tie with whoever was in first next to me or second next to me. And then I would just turn it on to a sprint, all out, like just energy dump in the last lap. And I could hear everybody just erupt and go crazy and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
it
I
gets
think
you
that kind
going.
of like yeah, like it kind of lit the showman in me a little bit about like, okay, like this is fun to kind of show out and get the crowd going. And when I got into strongman, like I could kind of carry that too, where I was just like, oh, this is really a showman sport. Like I can kind of do these ridiculous things that look really cool and get the crowd behind me and get kind of energy from it.
Yeah,
So I think that was kind of my first experience with like stoking that kind of competitive flame.
yeah, and I know the competitions that we've done together. Like, yeah, we're trying to kick each other's ass, but like we're also like hyping each other up so much before every lift. So
Yeah,
that the camaraderie has been awesome, even at like the top level
yeah.
competition. So that definitely carries over. When did you start strongman?
So I started just messing around with implements to begin with, probably back in 2014, 2015.
Okay,
I had previous to that been playing rugby with Norfolk's D1's men club, and they did their off-season training at this gym called Brute Strength. That was like the go-to mecca on the East Coast for like strongman training. They had every off-the-wall implement you could want. Like they had Atlas stones up to 500 pounds. They had
hmm,
car deadlift frames. They had like every Husafel stone you can imagine. They had single fingers, a Conan's wheel, every set of farmers. They had a couple like, excuse me, world's strongest man, like antique pieces of equipment, like old
that's pretty
suitcase
cool.
carries and like yokes that were used in world's strongest man. Yeah, it was a pretty dope place to train in. But I didn't realize what it was when I got there. I was like, because I came from like a Globo gym, like a One Life. I don't know if they have those out there, but it's kind of like a Gold's Gym adjacent, right?
Yeah.
So I walked in there. I was like, wow, I don't know what to do with like 80% of this shit. But so I would go in and train like 7 in the morning, just doing my weird like bodybuilding, powerlifting. I just want to be big and jacked and juicy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember there were a group of guys. Most of them were like heavyweights. But they were because I was one of the only people in the gym like that early in the morning with them. and we kind of became buddy buddy, and they kept like bullying me and goading me and to be like, bet you can't do this, bet you can't do this. So sure enough, started hanging out with them and doing all the stuff with them. So there was me at like 190 pounds, like 20 years old, trying to hang with this heavyweight guy on these weird implements I've never done before. Um, and so it kind of stoked my love for the sport. Like it was a lot of community and a lot of camaraderie in that little training group when we first started, and it was a really neat way to be introduced to the sport.
Yeah. So what was your first competition like? If you can kind of think back then, and then like what did it teach you? Did you learn anything on that first competition?
uh, yeah, I learned a lot. It was horrifying. I had a whole lot of like first comp jitters. It was nuts, man. Like I remember good. Actually, I remember all the events pretty distinctly. It was um, it was like Brute Strongest Man show that they had, and I had to compete up a weight class because at that point it was like a combined middleweight division. They didn't have like a cut 90 class. We didn't have enough people to fill it out. Um, and at that show, that was one of like Lynn Morehouse's. I think one of his comeback shows after he had an injury.
Okay.
So I was competing with a guy that owns OSG, like my first competition out the gate. Um, and I remember the very first event was a press medley with a log, an axle, and a circus dumbbell. And I was so shaky and nervous. I could not like keep consciousness with the log in the rack. I kept like launching off my chest and dropping it. And then the second event I remember was a Viking press. And as soon as I heard the go whistle, it was just boom, 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 boom. I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking. And my judge was a good buddy and training partner of mine at the time, a guy named Steve Tripp, who's
Oh yeah, I
like
know Steve.
yeah, like super prolific in the sport. Been doing this for forever. He's one of the smartest dudes I know. Um, and he was judging me, and he gave me like one or two that I didn't need to get, and then he just stopped dropping his hand. And one of my best friends, this guy Justin Tucker, he's like my strongman godfather. Like he is a salty old chief that was like pushing me in the gym for years and years and years. Like was in my ear, and he was like, "Wait for the fucking bell to land." And then I finally like snapped out of it. I'd wasted like 10 reps that didn't count. Um, and then started a more slow, measured approach. And I think I ended up taking like second or third behind Lynn in that event. Um, and then my favorite event from that show was a max frame deadlift. And
Hmm.
I didn't realize how cool it was at the time, but I ended up tying for first with this guy Connor Nave, who he hasn't competed in a while, unfortunately. I don't think, but at the time, like he was a pretty like top level national 105
Okay.
guy, and I tied him with like a 910 pull. And I was like, I don't know what this means, but in retrospect, I'm like, dude, to be 190 pounds at your first show and pull over 900 pounds on a frame was probably pretty dope.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I remember after that being like, yep, this is what I want to do. This is fun. Like I got to scream and act a fool and like lift
Yeah.
heavy things with my friends all day, and like everybody reacted really well to it, and like it was a pretty cool sense of satisfaction. And it just kind of got the bug from that and never looked back.
So when did you start adding in the jean shorts?
That was probably God. I want to say that was 22. Yeah, that would have to have been 2022. I think possibly at that Arnold. If not that Arnold, then maybe OSG that year. I think actually no, it was OSG that year. Because I
Okay.
remember I had one of my favorite like OSG performances. I think I took third in the sandbag to shoulder medley, and I was doing it like next to my buddy Aaron Fondry, who like when I was coming up in the sport, like he's up in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, something like that. But he had like the 90 kilo world record deadlift for forever. He was just a phenomenal deadlifter
Mm.
and athlete. And he was like one of the top dogs at the time that I was chasing. And then unfortunately he had a yoke injury at OSG in 2018, I think. 19, which took him out for a couple of years. But that was his return show. And I was so excited to get to compete with him. And he was in the lane next to me, and him and I were going head to head. And I had just out edged him a little bit on that last bag and overtook him on the event. And then after that, I was like, all right, these are my lucky jorts. Like I'm wearing these
Yeah.
at every competition, every time after that. And I have worn them at every show since after that.
Yeah. Because I started in like December of 2020. So like kind of like
Hmm.
during COVID, they had like the first competition. It was my first competition. We had to wear masks.
Yep.
When we were competing, if you were doing an event, you could take your mask off just so you could breathe.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
I did one of those.
but yeah, so then I never met you before America's Strongest Man in
Hmm.
Orlando. and kind of like warming up backstage. I see you in the jean shorts. I'm like, how's this guy gonna lift in jeans? Like, what the heck is
Yeah.
going on? And you just went out there and just kicked everyone's butt. So it was awesome.
Yeah, no, I think I would love to take credit for it. I absolutely cannot because like CJ Kraus is probably known as one of the most fashionable dudes in the 90 kilo class in the sport
Yeah.
overall. Was killing the jorts look well before I was starting it, and I think he probably gave me passive permission that like, hey, this is cool, you can do this. This is
Yeah.
this is normal. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll try them. Fortunately, the company is also based out of where I'm from, so I get easy access to a bunch of them if I need.
That's nice. What's the company? Might have to try
It,
some.
it's Born Primitive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
really stretchy, really good to train in, like really
Okay.
comfortable.
Don't think I could
I'm
pull
not
them off.
sponsored, but if they want to sponsor me, I'm open.
Not sure if I could pull them off. Maybe I can make them like dad shorts or something. Pull them
There
off
you
as
go.
dad
Yeah,
shorts. Yeah.
the time's coming.
Yeah. How has competing shaped the way that you work with your clients? Do you have them do a lot of strongman stuff, even if they don't want to compete in strongman?
Um, so my clients vary widely from like competitive athletes that
Hmm.
like full bore into strongman, from people that are transitioning from powerlifting into strongman, um, from people that were like previous football athletes that just want to get conditioned and strong again, but are bored with just doing barbell stuff, to just general fitness clients, right? Um, so I would say for probably about 80% or so of my clients, I have them doing some form of strongman work, right?
Yeah.
For example, I got a guy who just like a specimen of an athlete. Like I think he played D1 football in college. He qualified for regionals CrossFit. He's been to nationals for weightlifting. Um, he came to me because he saw the strongman stuff I did, and he was like, "Hey, dude, like I just want to get strong and conditioned. I'm bored with my normal stuff. Like, can you show me some of these things?"
Yeah.
So twice a week, we have sessions where we'll do like an hour session where it's just doing a press, like in either a deadlift or a thing he's feeling that week. Um, so I have him full bore on like, all right, we're gonna train for strength. Like he loves yoke, so we keep yoke in every session.
Okay.
And then our conditioning day will be a combination of like me and assault bike sprints and then really light yoke work, but for fast transitions and short rest times.
Yeah.
And then we'll do some kind of like strongman themed burner at the end when maybe we'll do like a backward sled drag into a series of sandbag to shoulders into like hammer swings for me. And then I have just general fitness people. Then strongman's kind of like an intimidating thing from the jump if you're
Yeah.
not used to the gym in the first place.
For sure.
So I kind of put that farther down the road for my general fitness guys where they're like, oh, like, I just want to look good for the beach. And I'm like, for now, that's the plan. And then like as they get further on down the road, I'm like, hey, let's try something that's fun. We've been benching for a while. Maybe let's try, I don't know, pressing a log out of a rack and see how you feel about that.
Yeah.
And then they slowly start to catch the itch from there.
I mean, a lot of the strongman events, if you train them, they have great carryover just to like everyday life anyways. So I mean, you don't have to necessarily like put 300 pounds on the log. Like try and clean it your first time. Like it's just do the damn log or do the
Yeah.
farmer carries. Like that's like carrying the groceries if you're 60 years old. You know what I'm saying? So like that stuff can help carry over to your life. You don't have to go like say you're going to compete.
Oh, for sure. And
So
like, and I think that's, and you'll probably run into this as a coach too. But trying to get people into strongman or whatever, and they come to you and they're like, "Hey, man, I'm not doing what you're doing. I can't do that yet. Like, it looks intimidating." It's like, I don't like that's not the expectation. The
yeah,
expectation isn't you shouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. Like, I'm to build you to a place where like you enjoy doing this first and foremost in a way that's like safe and healthy for you,
yeah.
and then we
Well,
can decide to do what's from there.
yeah,
Um, like I've got a guy who he's just built for strength sports, like leverages and all of it is just built for it, right? But he's like, I don't need to get jacked. I don't need to get really strong. Like I've got a 80-pound dog and I'm tired of being winded when I pick him up. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got some things for that. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
sandbags transition to that perfectly well, right? Like you said, farmer's carries, perfect for carrying groceries, or like tired of making 15 trips from your car every day. Like, cool, let's try and do it in one,
Yeah.
So I've maintained that like CrossFit and strongman are like two of the best training systems just for just general health and life. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? To prepare you for whatever you need on a daily basis.
yeah. So what are your favorite events to train for yourself, and then like your least favorite events to train?
Um, I'm a sucker for heavy lifts. I skew towards static lifts,
Yep.
to my detriment more often than not. So I love a good axle clean and jerk. I love a heavy deadlift. In my lead up for OSG, one of the movements I was doing was a SSB Zercher extension, like heavy for reps, immediately
Yeah.
transitioned into a sandbag extension for reps.
Yeah.
Um, so little medleys like that, like I'm a big fan of. You don't need a whole lot of technique for them necessarily. It just gives you an opportunity just to kind of go berserk a little bit
Yeah.
and
Be
empty the
explosive.
tank on being all out, right? And feeling like an athlete too, right? By the end of it, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I just did something that was like really heavy and really hard, and I feel satisfied. And as far as least favorite events go, grip has always plagued me. It's not my most favorite thing to train in the past. It's something I've been hammering a lot at over the last couple of years to make up for a lot of deficiencies that have reared its head at really crucial moments in shows. Um, but I'm coming around to enjoying doing farmers carries a little bit more, just general.
Yeah. I would say I'm the total opposite of you.
Hmm.
I struggle with static lifts, but
Yeah,
anything moving or stones, that's what I want in competitions. So,
right. I was about to say because I'm pretty sure you overtook me in the yoke at ASM.
yeah. And I think the shield.
Yeah, and the shield. God, the shield was so. Yeah, you did. You got did you get like second in that?
I got second, or I got second in the shield and third in the yoke by like I think Nick
That's
beat
right.
barely beat me in the yoke,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
right. I
And
remember
then
that.
yeah, and I hate
You're a very
freaking
good mover.
I hate sandbags too. Like throw sandbags. I hate
Oh,
throwing
same,
sandbags.
same. That's another thing. Like those were always my two weak links was anything grip related and
Yep.
sandbag throws.
Yep.
And the last year and a half has been an incredible emphasis on both of those things to the point where I feel like my sandbag throws have improved pretty significantly. I think at the Arnold in 20, it's 2025. Yeah. Last year's Arnold in 24, I
Yeah.
took second in that behind Haynes, which Andrew Haynes is like the best in the world, one of the best in the world,
Yeah.
hands down on any given day at throwing bags. So I was like, okay, I've probably gotten some decent training in this if I'm somewhat hanging with it.
Yeah. Because that was when it was like 13, 14, 15, and then you had to do two bags over each, right?
Yeah, it was like a sandbag throw steeplechase kind of
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I only got like through one part of it. But then
Well, it was tough.
this year at America's
Good.
Strongest Man, it was pretty freaking high though too. Didn't they have it like
Yeah, it
17,
was at
18 feet?
17. It was 17 feet. Yeah, and I was just like, this is somewhat ridiculous.
And
But I mean, to
there,
his credit, he was like, I want the sign high so we can have advertisement. So I mean, we appreciate it. It brings in the
yeah,
crowd and gives us notoriety. But
yeah.
good God, that was high.
What competitions have you enjoyed the most? Like based on events, maybe the crowd, the people you go against.
Uh, I would say this past Arnold. Granted, it's the most recent, and I did all right at it, so I'm biased. Um, but I think genuinely was probably one of the best times I've had competing. Um, just with general mindset, with the people I was there with the competition I was there with, um, performance, and I think that's probably one of the biggest crowds I've ever seen for an Arnold Strongman. Um, that one was one of my favorites. I've had a couple local shows, like I did. It was in 2023. I did Maryland State Championships. I think in August, and met some really cool guys there. There's just a class of three. It was me and two other dudes, but man, we were broing out the whole time. Like I just kind of needed like I needed a not crazy high level show to be able to
Yeah,
take the pressure off for a minute and just remember how to compete intelligently and have fun and enjoy kind of the space and being there again. And I had such a good time. It was like the halfway point because I was taking a vacation that week and I was driving up to Pennsylvania, and that was the halfway point from Virginia to where I was going.
Okay.
So stopped there, took like 2 days there, competed, had a great time, and then went on vacation for the week. And it was a really, really good way to start off the week. But I'd say probably that one. My first OSG in 21 was a blast, just because that was my first time ever there on that kind of like stage.
Yeah.
And then this most recent one. And then obviously the ASM that we did together. I've had a lot of good shows that
Yeah.
I've been a fan of. Actually, like I've said it in a couple of different post write ups that like anytime competing in strongman, like any day getting to compete and do it is a good day. Like you might have shitty events and you might have things not go your way that like bring you down for the moment, but once kind of time passes and you think about it, it's like I actually had a pretty good time.
What do you think people misunderstand about the sport of strongman?
Um,
That we're all
so
like arrogant dickheads?
I think there's an element of that. I think that people assume that. I also think like I train and coach in not quite a commercial gym, but it's a pretty good hybrid mix of like a commercial gym and like a strength focused gym, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of just general population people that don't know anything about strongman, barely know anything about powerlifting. I think most people assume, like in talking about them and trying to get people to like join in, that they think they have to be like 400 pounds or that they can't compete because they're not 400. I think that's a pretty big misconception. Um, I think I mean, granted, we do it to ourselves. The way we present ourselves, we're a bunch of big, jack tattooed, shaved head dudes with beards that scream a lot, like, are probably pretty terrifying. But I think on the whole, like 95% of the strongman community is actually incredibly welcoming,
Yeah.
like, and would happily put aside their workout to go and talk to you about whatever. Um, yeah, I think we have a big misconception about being overly intimidating when it's just like, no, we will happily like include you in this at any chance you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not the only person I've interviewed that has said that. And I'm just like I've hosted like three competitions in the last year at my gym, and
Wow.
people are like, man, that was like the most encouraging place I've ever been. Like just feeling the energy
Yeah.
from everybody. Everyone, even if you're going against somebody in your class, they're helping you out, giving you
Mm-hmm.
pointers. I remember Derek was giving, I know he tries to get in your head a little bit, but he was giving me some pointers on the sandbag throw.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, let's say it's the same thing. Like and you go to any high level competition like Derek at this past ASM. um oh my god, Jesse, that's his name, I almost forgot his name.
Jesse,
Jesse Castens had never done sandbag throws ever,
yeah,
and Derek was like, hey dude, wear a belt, you need to do these three things, and then he goes on to take like second in the event.
yeah,
Like, because that's the cool thing about the sport, like it's none of us want to beat you because you weren't prepared for that day. None of us want to beat you because you just
Mm,
didn't know. Like, if we're
yeah,
going to win, we want to be able to claim the win that you were at your best, and so we. And in that way, that naturally just breeds an inclusive community of being
yeah,
friendly. Everybody's gone through the same like shit roll of training, and everyone's put in the same amount of effort, ideally. And like everyone's gone through the cuts. Like we've all kind of suffered through it individually, but also collectively.
yeah.
So once you've done that with a group of people and you've seen them enough, like, yeah, man, it's like a brotherhood.
So when you're putting together a program for yourself or for a client, like what are the most like important principles that you try to incorporate or follow?
So when I'm putting stuff together for my clients, I typically I try to start them off with um, sort of a strongman movement in the beginning, right? So some kind of like skill or strength based work, right?
Yeah,
Especially for my newer people, I don't have a lot of my strongman people are newer-ish to the sport, at least competitive experience wise. So for a lot of them, event familiarity is kind of a priority for me. So I try to make whether it's log or whether it's axle or a yoke or farmers, I try to make that the priority for the day. And then I'll throw in like barbell work and machines and dumbbells as accessory works to support that movement throughout the day. And then as we start training more and deficiencies show up in their technique or whatever, then I'll change and alter the accessories or even the main portion of the skill movement to kind of those weaknesses.
what are your favorite like accessories for overhead, deadlift, and squat?
So some of my favorite accessories for like a deadlift, again, general without worrying about like sticking points,
Yeah,
a lot of upper back work. So a lot of like barbell rows with pauses at the top and tempos on the way and down to reinforce your upper back position and strength. A lot of cable rows, some lat pull downs with pauses at the bottom.
yeah,
Um, as far as overhead, like I'm a sucker for split jerks, so it gets a little bit more technical.
yeah,
Um, but I find that a lot of the problems when it comes to a good overhead is just rack positioning and like dip and drive mechanics, right?
Yeah.
So doing a lot of like tall jerks or like tempo dips into pauses in the dip into like explosive drives. Thrusters will do a lot for positioning work and explosiveness coming out. Um, bench, I don't program a lot of bench. I use bench more as like an accessory movement for
Yeah.
overhead, at least when it comes to more strongman specific things. But um, for my general fitness people, I'll use that as their main strength movement, and
Yeah.
then I'll throw in like pin pushes and pause, but just real simple things, man. Like my philosophy when it comes to training is, um, a lot of people like to overcomplicate things,
Yeah. For
when
sure.
really it's just meat and potatoes. Do like your main compound lifts, throw in supporting accessories, and then maybe tweak one or two things as the deficiencies. Like you don't need. It's just doing a lot of the same thing progressively
Yeah.
throughout cycles.
Yeah, too many people have seen Joel Seedman doing some stuff, and they were like, "Let's do this." I'm like, "That it does has nothing to do with what we're trying to do, and it's not doing anything. We can just trap bar
Right.
deadlift and not have a chain hanging from your neck while I hit you with a freaking medicine ball."
Right. Right. Like it's social media has made coaching is infinitely more difficult while opening up more avenues at the same time. It's kind of country.
When did you have you always done split jerk, or when did you incorporate that in? Because I've just recently started doing that, and it's helped my
So
overhead a lot.
yeah, split jerk is a huge difference maker. Like when I started actually like learning the split jerk and getting more proficient at it, that's when my overhead blew up. And that is entirely thanks to my coach Jordan Roscoe. I've been working with him since, oh, I want to say the winter of 2019,
Okay.
and he came from like a CrossFit weightlifting coaching background, and he also coached a lot of strongman prior too. So he was already proficient in coaching it. But previous to that, I had been doing like a bastardized push jerk. Like I didn't even realize really what a jerk was. I thought I was just doing a push press with extra English. Um, and then it took some weightlifting friends of mine at Brute who are constantly like, "Hey, you have to stop calling that a push press. That's a push jerk. And if you're going to do that intentionally. Like make a point to do that."
Yeah.
And so on my own, honestly, that probably started back in 2017 ish.
Okay.
I
So you've
tried
been
to
doing
kind
it
of
a
start
while.
like, yeah, and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I just kind of knew the general idea of, oh, just drop back under the bar again, which isn't really the best cue for coaching it, but in my head at the time. So I was kind of trying to work through a pusher for a couple years, and then my coach Jordan was like, "Okay, you kind of have an idea of how this is going to be. We're going to teach you a new thing. You're going to do a split jerk." And it's been the last 5 years of just hammering and being as proficient as I can.
I really want to talk about how you weight cut because I remember, I think the last two competitions, you were like, "Yeah, I bulked up a little too much this time, and the weight cut was a little hard." So,
Yeah,
how do you weight cut? Do you do a lot of sauna? Like, kind of go through that process.
yeah. So I'll typically try to. Um, I mean, I walk around heavy, I think, for most 90s, and talking to
Yeah,
some guys. Like right now, I'm 221. Um, Granted, I'm like full bore into a planned off season, so I'm planning to get up to like 230, 235, and see what I can do there. Um,
yeah,
but I'll typically try to diet down to about like somewhere between 215 and 217. And then I'll go into, and that's like the heaviest I'll cut from. That's about where I had to cut from for this month, right? So I'll do that going into my water cut week, so 7 days before weigh-ins. Um, and a lot of, if not all of the protocol that I run for my weight cuts, I learned from my buddy Greg Schlitz, who's a registered dietitian, a clinical dietitian, down in North Carolina. I worked with him for the Chaos show I did in England back in 2023. And I use that still to this day. But basically, I'll just do a water load, increasing in volume up until about 3 days, 3 days out from weigh 2 or 3 days out from weigh-ins. And then during that time period, we're adding sodium in and then dropping sodium out probably about the same time. And then slowly dropping carb intake by quarter, half, but replacing it with fats and protein. So I'm still
okay,
keeping all of my calories in.
yeah.
Um, it's like a modified gut cut, if anyone's familiar with ever having done a gut cut. So instead of having like a lot of bagels and rice, now you're having a lot of peanut butter or low carb ice cream or keto yogurt or stuff like that. And then 2 days out, I dropped my water to about a gallon and a half. And then the day before weigh-ins, I have 40 ounces of water. Um, And I mean, I regularly get between, I think for this prep, I was at about 4,000 to 4,500 calories. Um, I want to say the day before weigh-in, so when I was driving out to Ohio, my calories were probably about supposed to be about 1,500. I think
Oh shit.
I probably only had about 600 that day. I get like I'm confident in my weight cut, but it's at that point like I just am so jittery and anxious to get it over with that I'm just like I'll have some eggs and a protein shake that morning and call it a day. Um, I think I might have had some bland like peanuts or something on the drive, but that was probably about it. And I've been doing this long enough that like hunger pangs aren't bad. And
Yeah.
honestly, I felt really satiated when it came to water all the way through that day up until we got to Ohio. And then I was like, all right, this kind of sucks a little bit. Um, but we got there kind of late. I think we probably got there about seven or so. And then we went back, got kind of like all adjusted at the Airbnb, and then we kind of made the call whether or not we want to go out to a sauna that night and start or just try to get some good sleep and try in the morning. So then we decided sauna in the morning, got up at like 5:30, and I think we were there from about 6:30 until about 10:30. Um, and that is the most rounds I have ever done in a sauna for a cut so far. And overall, I didn't feel real bad, but towards the end of it, it was starting to hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
I keep a log of all of my weight cuts. I don't remember offhand, but I think I probably did about 6 or 7 30-minute sessions. And typically I stop at about, and I just need to get this going now. We were lazy and I couldn't find a sauna, so I just did a bunch of hot baths,
Okay.
and that felt way worse than any sauna I've ever done. And I felt like I was losing like a good 2 to 3 pounds each sit of
Oh,
like
really?
20 to 30 minutes in the bath. And I get out every time and I'm like, yeah, like I was losing weight fast in a hot bath. But I had a harder time sleeping that night and it hit me harder after each run than just doing a sauna. Um, so yeah, long story short, I just do like water loading and then a little bit of carb manipulation throughout the week. And I typically just skew towards doing saunas either the night before, mostly the morning of.
And then what do you do? Like, as soon as you weigh in, what's your go-to thing? Do you electrolytes, water, and food, or do you have anything else that you do?
Yeah, pretty much just electrolytes and foods and water. Like I make a joke every time that like I only do this sport to cut weight so I can have the taste of like an orange Gator light at weigh-ins because no matter what you do throughout the year, that's almost the most refreshing, most satisfying thing that you'll ever taste. Just you're so dehydrated and just a cold Gator light feels amazing. Like, there have been times where I've legitimately had like tears well up in my eyes because I was like, this is the best thing. So I'll sip on a Gator light until I'm done with that. I'll have half of like a regular Gatorade. And then as long as my stomach feels like it's cooperating, I love bagels. Like I have bagels every morning for breakfast.
Hmm.
So I'll eat some bagels for some quick carbs. I'll have a banana, maybe some fruit. Then I have a protein shake pack with me that I'll sip on and then drink water.
Yeah.
And then probably within an hour, hour and a half of making weigh-ins, I'll go out and get breakfast somewhere. Um, and something that I've had an issue with in the past is overindulging at breakfast because I'm excited to eat. So I'll order way too much and then not be able to eat for the rest of the day. So last couple of shows, I've been working on reining in my impulse just to get like a stack of pancakes and chicken and waffles and like an omelet. Just eat one easy thing and then you'll eat again in an hour and a half. It's fine.
Yeah. How do you keep athletes motivated, especially during like a strength plateau?
I think it's important to stay focused that there's multiple markers for progress rather than just the heaviest weight on the bar that you can push for a single. You know what I mean? Like keeping
Yeah.
athletes aware that like, okay, hey, you didn't hit your heavy single today like you hoped you did, but guess what? Like your warm-ups move better than they ever have. You're not as winded, and your back down sets of five are at weight you've never used before. So like overall, like while the ceiling's important to raise, the basement floor is arguably more important to raise because your work capacity has gone um, up way more. So on your worst day, you're still going to do more than you ever were before. Um, and also reminding them that like it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like you might be having a rough day now, but like we're
Yeah,
looking at this for 2, 3 years from now, right? And any rough day that we have is kind of the same thing with like losing in a competition. We're not doing well in a competition. It's an opportunity to kind of take note of what we're doing, and then what we can fix to learn to get better later on. And it's hard. Like
for sure.
I'm kind of an emotional lifter. I would think like I get really attached to a number on a bar again to
Yeah,
my detriment. Um, and I constantly have to kind of remind myself that like, hey, some days we're just checking a box, and that's okay because just checking the box sets us up for things we weren't planning for that are even better later on down the road. And just constantly trying to like recenter clients' focus and athletes' focus too. Like, hey, it's not about today, it's not about tomorrow, it's about 2 years from now, it's about 4 years from now. It's about the basement floor, not the ceiling.
yeah. If someone could only focus on three lifts for overall strength, what three exercises would you have in the rotation?
I would say a some form of a clean and press. Um, I would say a sandbag to shoulder, or a stone, or some kind of object from the ground to shoulder, um, and a deadlift.
Perfect. What's one cue that instantly improves a lifter's technique? It could be on log, deadlift, squat. What's one cue that you really like that like you could just tell somebody and it would improve right away?
So like I said earlier, I work in somewhat of a commercial gym, but we started doing a trainer tip Tuesday series. And one of the ones I just did for that was bracing.
Ooh,
And you'd be surprised how many lifters don't understand how much like bracing and breathing affects and influences a lift.
yeah.
And it's pretty universal across any kind of compound, any kind of strength movement.
Can you kind of go over how that video was? Like you described the bracing?
Yeah. Yeah. So bracing basically is a method of breathing for any kind of compound lift, right? Where you're trying to cast your midsection so strength can transfer either through your legs to your upper body where the bar is posted or from your arms through your midsection to your legs where your legs are doing all the work, right? And the idea is that you're going to take a big belly breath, fill your diaphragm, and then you're going to flex everything downwards and outwards like you're about to get punched. Um, and you're going to hold that breath through the entire motion until you get to the back of the top of the lift. You're going to let it out, and then you're going to repeat the process again until you finish your set. Um, One of the cues that I like to use for that, that seems kind of easy to translate, is just get fat. You're going to take a big breath and you're going to get fat with your stomach, and then you're going to
Yeah.
hold. Another caveat I made in the video is, especially for squats, is if you're breathing and you think you're bracing and you notice your shoulders and the bar rise, you're breathing into your lungs and you're not so much casting your midsection like you're
Yeah.
which is
That's
again,
perfect.
get fat comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of people that are somewhat new to the gym and they
Mm-hmm.
see like me like hold my breath on like a yoke or
Yeah,
a heavy lift and they're like, you need to breathe, you need to breathe. I was like, no, I don't. I'm trying to
actually,
actually I'd rather
yeah,
pass out than
yeah,
not have my core braced.
yeah, because this is all gonna go south real fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. It's funny how often I like have to get into a conversation in regards to like just the details of breathing, how much they overthink it. They're like, okay, so I hold the breath here, but then I breathe out at the bottom and I get new air, and then I come back up. It's like, no, 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 wait. Hold your breath all the way through like this, and then you let it out at the top at the end of the rep. And then we'll go to do it, and they'll do 3 reps back to back like that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Breathe in between each rep.
Yeah. Okay. Want to get your take on a few um controversial takes. What's
Sure.
the biggest scam you see in the fitness industry right now?
Oh boy. Um,
It could be a couple if you got a few off the
yeah, I think personal training and coaching is just because there's so much science behind it and it seems so overcomplicated to like your general viewer and lifter. Um, I think coaches that try to overcomplicate things and say this one trick that only I know is going to fix everything that's going wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an immediate red flag. Um, I wouldn't say so much that this is scammy. Um, I think potentially for some people it can be a waste of time and it's a little bit overused. But I think if you don't have any underlying injuries that you're trying to adjust or address and you haven't worked with a PT, I think a lot of mobility work in regards to warm ups, like just doing endless dead bugs, when you could just be sitting on a bike to get sweaty for 10 minutes and then just start appropriately warming up with the bar for whatever you're doing for the day. I think there's a better use of your time than just spending an hour doing mobility drills. Again, that's for your general lifter. If you have like previous injuries or limitations that you're trying to correct and you've already spoken with the PT about it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people just see that pushed on Instagram and they're like, oh, well, I got a deadlift today. I have to do my dead bugs and my bird dogs and all of these things.
What's the most overhyped exercise?
Uh, I think hip thrusts with where we're at in today's society. I think hip thrusts get used and abused to death. Um, we do weird things in strongman, so not for nothing, not shaming anybody, but I watched someone fail rep one of a 2 rep attempt of a 7 plate hip thrust the other day. And I'm just like, for why are we doing this? Like, it's okay if we're just having fun and we just want to try it. That's okay. But I think people live and die by that machine, and I'm not certain as to why anymore.
What's the like least hyped exercise that underrated?
So I'd mentioned it earlier, but I think like Zerchers and SSB Zercher extensions have huge carryover for a lot of different elements of strongman, um, and just general strength, right? Being able to pick something from a crouched position and explode as hard as you can into a triple extension with weight loaded to the front. Like I think it's huge carryover for sandbags, for Atlas stones, for Husafels, for sandbag throws, for cleaning a log, for cleaning an axle, like just a
Yeah.
plethora of things. You know?
Yeah. So how do you handle discussions, around PEDs and strongman? Do you think it's pretty common in the smaller weight classes compared to the open weight classes?
Yeah, I think it is common. I wouldn't be able to speak on how if it's more frequently used in smaller weight classes versus
Yeah.
open weight classes.
Yeah.
But we would be kidding ourselves to pretend like it's not a thing. Um, I have clients that like are a little bit intimidated about getting involved in the sport because of it or where they stand because of it. And I have a very honest conversation with them. Like it's something that's allowed in the sport.
Yeah,
You can't get upset for people for using it when it's allowed. Like if people are willing to make that choice for their
for
training
sure.
and go all in on it, then more power to them. That option's available to you if you want. However, um, I've had people ask like, "Oh, well, should I? Should I not?" And I'm like, "I'm not a doctor." Like there are a lot of questions that you need to ask personally for yourself in regards to side effects and the person you're going to be after that and the financial feasibility of it.
For sure.
Speak with your significant other, speak with your doctor. Um, but it's part of the sport. It is what it is. I don't I think it's a tool. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's a thing that's there that um, if you're going to use it, it needs to be used intelligently and safely.
For sure. How important is it for an athlete to have a coach of their own?
I think it's crucial. I know some people that have been able to get pretty far without one, but I will always maintain like I'm a coach. I coach a bunch of people.
Yeah.
The biggest differentiating factor from like in my performance, like the biggest net benefit was getting my coach Jordan. Like there's a night and day difference between who I was as an athlete and who I was as a competitor before versus now.
Yeah, I agree with my coach.
Yeah. Like we are all biased and we are all emotional when it comes to the gym. Like we are not always going to make good, sound decisions for ourselves. It's really important to have an outside opinion who's a professional who can eyeball the things that you're doing wrong objectively and be honest with you about what needs to be fixed or what we need to do or not do.
Yeah. So I know we kind of talked about this off camera at the very beginning, but what's next for you? Any competitions? Any goals? You want to go after any world records or any gym lifts in the upcoming years?
Um, yeah, so for right now, I'm 95% in on taking a year off of just getting as strong as I can, putting on a lot more muscle, kind of shoring up some deficiencies I have, getting better at my moving events and my grip, the usual stuff. Um, I would like to consider doing America's Strongest Man again this year. I've done the first two. I would like to also do this one. It's kind of dependent on when Strongman Core decides to drop the date, the events, and the location. But barring that, yeah, man, I want to get big. I want to get strong. Right now, I want to. My two big goals for the year are I want to push a 400 split jerk. I think that'd be really rad, and I think I'm close. And I want to get an 800 raw deadlift.
Okay.
I pulled I pulled 750 last July, last June or July. Um, and I still had more in the tank. I probably could have taken it to seven plates at least that day. So I think given like a full year off of just training for that, eating without cutting,
Yeah.
like I think I've got that in my wheelhouse, if not something real close to it.
Do you think you'd have to be like 230, 240 to hit that, or do you think you could do it around 220?
I bet I could do it around 220, maybe 225. I think
Okay.
when I hit 750 last year, I was about 220.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was dieting down, starting to diet down for ASM then. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got 10 rapid fire questions for you so we can get on with these. What's your favorite strongman event?
Axle clean and jerk.
Ask clean and jerk. What's the heaviest thing you've ever lifted?
I've deadlifted 1,005 pound trap bar, and if you count yoke pick and holds, which I probably wouldn't, but I'm going to throw it out there, I've done 1,200 pounds on that.
Okay. Atlas stone or log press, which do you prefer?
5 years ago, Atlas Stone, now log press.
I think you already mentioned, but what's the most underrated exercise for strongman training? I'm assuming the Zercher.
Yep. Yeah, Zercher extensions.
What's your go-to meal before a big event?
I try to eat pretty normal before big events, so I'll have two of Dave's killer bagels, everything bagels with a tablespoon of honey on each, some yogurt, and a banana.
If you had to host a national level competition, what 5 events would you select?
Ooh. Actual clean and press, 4 reps in 60 seconds. I would do a max deadlift. I would do a sandbag to shoulder medley. I would do, because I'm also a sucker for deadlift, I'd also do a car deadlift. And then I would do an odd object load.
Mm. Who's your favorite strongman of all time?
Mm. I want to lean towards Big Z because he gave me a fist bump and a head nod once in the warm up room at OSU 2021, but I don't really have a whole lot of favorite big guys. Um, I would, I would say some of my favorite strongmen of all time are just some of the guys I compete with just because they're really, really, really good friends. Like you, Derek Owens, Nick O'Hare, Nikolai Myers, Andrew Hannes, like a lot of the 90s I'm really good friends with. So
Yeah.
I always love seeing them.
What's the hardest event in strongman in your opinion?
Wrecking ball hold.
Ooh, yeah. What's the craziest lift you've ever witnessed?
Um, oh God, why am I blanking? It's got to be an overhead. Um, I don't know, man. Seeing he hasn't competed in a while, which is unfortunate, but seeing some of Ben Donan's deadlifts now are kind of fucking wild. How big he is.
Yeah, that guy is crazy.
Yeah.
That guy's crazy. All right. I would like to thank Andrew for taking time out of his day to be on the podcast today. Where can everybody follow you at?
I am at pro_Pepiot, Pepiot on Instagram. That's
Perfect.
besides my Facebook, which is kind of a personal profile. That's my only social media I got.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Andrew. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.